In our episodes, we discuss cases and topics that might be distressing or disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. If you follow true crime, you have almost certainly heard of this case. If you haven't, you may have seen this case in the news over the last few weeks. The death of Ellen Greenberg is a case that has generated an extreme amount of attention and controversy. Ellen was found deceased by her fiancé on January 26, 2011. She had 20 stab wounds on her chest and on the back of her neck and head. Despite this, her death was ruled a suicide. Over the last decade plus, Ellen's parents have been demanding that her case be reopened and thoroughly investigated. They have gone through intense legal battles, have been represented by multiple attorneys, they've had private investigators, independent reviews of the case, all of it. I generally avoid covering these very well-known and controversial cases, but with the recent October 10th ruling from the Philadelphia Chief Medical Examiner stating that it is their opinion that this death is a suicide, I started doing some research into the case. So in this episode, I'm going to lay out the research I have found. My primary sources include police reports, autopsy summaries, the new documentary Death in Apartment 603, and the recently published opinion from the medical examiner. I am going to try to just lay out the case, keeping my own opinion out of it, so you can determine for yourself what you think happened here. At the very end, I will give my thoughts. I will put my sources and links in the show notes if you want to dive even deeper into this case, because I can promise you what I am about to lay out for you is not even scratching the surface. But let's get started. On January 26, 2011, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a massive winter storm was heading through the region, and many were leaving work early to head home. This was the case for both 28-year-old Sam Goldberg and 27-year-old Ellen Greenberg. Ellen was a first-grade teacher, and Sam and Ellen had been dating for over 3 years and had been engaged since June of 2010. Their wedding was planned for that August in the year 2011. Ellen got home from work around 1:30 p.m., and Sam got home just about 20 minutes after her. Just a few hours later, Sam left their apartment to go use the gym that was in their complex. When he left, Ellen was reportedly grading papers and using her laptop. Sam was in the gym for about 40 minutes, but when he returned to their apartment, he reported that it was locked. And Sam had apartment keys with him, but he said the door was locked from the inside with one of those swing metal bar latches that you often see in hotel rooms. Sam knocked on the door, but Ellen didn't respond. He called and texted her and reportedly also sent her an email, but she didn't answer. He began to bang on the door, clearly getting frustrated, but Ellen didn't come. Between 5:32 and 5:54 p.m., Sam texted Ellen 9 times. The texts read the following. Hello? Open the door. What are you doing? I'm getting pissed. Hello? You better have an excuse. What the fuck? You have no idea. Right around 5:45 p.m., and I will post a more in-depth timeline on social media down to the exact minute, a neighbor reported hearing Sam calling Ellen's name multiple times. After 10 to 15 minutes of this, Sam goes down to their apartment's lobby and asks the doorman, Phil, if he could help him open the door. Phil said it's against policy for him to leave the area, but he offered to call Ellen, which he did multiple times, but she didn't answer the phone. Now, I don't know exactly at what point Sam moved from being annoyed and angry that he was locked out to being concerned, but around 6:30 p.m., after he placed some calls to his cousin and uncle, Sam decided he was going to break down the door, which he does, and he enters their apartment. At 6:33 p.m., Sam Goldberg calls 911. This is the full call, and it is distressing.
Help! I need a emergency now. I just walked to my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come help now.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no! Oh no! It's an apartment.
What apartment number?
Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell. She's.
No, sir, you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie!
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't tell where
Ellie!
the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, I think. But it's everywhere.
Okay, sir.
It's everywhere.
You think she might have fallen? Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone.
Fire Department 842. What's the address? No.
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please hurry.
4601 Flat Rock?
Yes.
What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
Okay. Is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So
okay, look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay. Do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay. I can tell you what to do. Okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her flat on her.
God.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, okay.
Are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off. Okay? You need to kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
okay, I'm trying not to. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God, she stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell with a knife. Oh, no, her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so I just let her down here now? I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is in her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Police, which operator?
277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are. You said 4601 Flat Rock, right?
Yes.
Okay, someone's on the way. And the knife is still inside?
Wait, so what?
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
Was it her chest or what area?
It's in her chest. It looks like it's right in her heart.
Okay, someone's on the way out there. Okay, just get.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Okay,
how old is she?
She's 27.
27, and there's no sign of life at all. Like,
no, please don't be. What?
Pinch her under her arm and tell me if she responds to pain.
Ellie. She's not. Her hands are still warm. I don't know if that means, but there's blood everywhere. I mean. I
know, but you can't, and the knife is still inside of her. How far? Can you see how far it went in?
It looks pretty deep.
Okay.
It looks it's a long knife.
Don't touch anything.
Yeah, don't touch anything, okay?
I'm not touching anything. I can't believe this, though.
So wait, it was just you there with her?
We're the only ones here.
And she ran in the door, you said latched it shut?
No, I went downstairs to work out, and when I came back up, the door was latched.
Oh.
Like, it was, it wasn't like, it was like locked from the inside, and I'm yelling. So I'm
was
yelling.
Your house broken into?
No.
So there's no sign of a break-in?
No sign of a break-in at all. I mean, there will be when you get here because I had to break the latch, but to get in.
Okay, 4601 Flat Rock, and this is a house, right?
It's an apartment. Flat Rock apartment.
Okay, that'll help.
Oh my God. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Over the course of the next few minutes, emergency responders and police respond to the scene. Ellen was pronounced dead at the scene at 6:40 p.m. At 8:15 p.m., detectives and an investigator from the medical examiner's office arrived on the scene. I am going to read you portions from an investigative report written by Stephen Olszewski. This section is titled Origins and Details. It says, on 1/26/11 at 1931, Detective Sierra 9103 of Homicide called to report the death of the above decedent found in her apartment with a knife in her chest. I arrived to the scene at 2027 and was met by 5th District Police Snipes 6358 and Young 6960 holding the log. The decedent's fiancé, Samuel Goldberg, along with his family and some friends were also present. This next section is titled Background. The decedent's fiancé, Samuel Goldberg, reportedly left the decedent at the apartment around 16:45 to go to the gym. He returned around 17:15 to 17:30 and was unable to get into the apartment. He opened the door with his keys, but the door was secure from the inside. He proceeded to try and contact the decedent via text messages, phone calls, and emails for approximately an hour before he forced entry into the apartment. An apartment security man was reportedly present during the entry. He immediately discovered her and called 911. Radio time is at 18:33. He was briefly instructed to start CPR until he noticed a knife in her chest, then was instructed to stop. PFD Medic 5 responded and pronounced death at 1840. This next section is titled Body and Vicinity. The location of death is in the kitchen of the decedent's apartment located at the Venice Loft Apartments, 4601 Flat Rock Road, Unit 603, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is a 2-bedroom apartment on the 6th floor of the building, shared by the decedent with her fiancé, Sam Goldberg. The apartment is well kept, clean. The inside lock to the front door, a common latch/solid bar door guard, is broken with screws on the door loose, obviously forced in when in a locked position. Throughout the entire apartment, there is no evidence of a struggle. Furniture and items appear in place. Nothing is obviously missing or disturbed. There are numerous valuables present: money, keys, 3 laptop computers, one in the kitchen on the island appears to be Goldberg's, one in the master bedroom suite on the floor appears to be the decedent's, as evidenced by wedding material, and one on an additional bedroom desk appears to be the decedent's work computer, as evidenced by numerous teaching materials. The decedent is a teacher. There is no note found or anything indicative of suicide on the computers or in the rest of the apartment. The only way to exit the apartment with the front doorway locked is through a rear slider leading to a patio. The patio is 6 stories high. There is snow present with no tracks or footprints, completely undisturbed. The ambient temperature is inside the apartment reads 69 degrees Fahrenheit on a thermostat. The incident occurred during a winter snowstorm. Prescription medication are recovered from a bedstand located in the master bedroom. A paper booklet is inside the decedent's pocketbook that's on a chair at the living room island, resembles a journal of her medications and her state of mind while taking, last dated 1/16. The decedent's cell phone is in the master bathroom. The decedent is on the hardwood kitchen floor located just inside the door entrance. The decedent is found supine with her head and some of her upper body shoulders resting against the lower half of the white kitchen cabinets next to the range. Her body, starting with the head, is facing north and the legs west. She is clad in a zipper-up, dark-colored shirt over top a t-shirt, gray sweatpants, underwear, and light brown Ugg boots. A pair of eyeglasses are on the floor to the right of the decedent. A white towel is grasped in her left hand. A hair tie or scrunchie is on her right wrist. There are no personal effects on the body. Upon further examination of the body, the decedent has a knife embedded in her left chest through her clothing. There are multiple stab wounds examined at the scene, at the chest where the knife is located, a few superficial grouped nearby, one to the left upper chest near the clavicle, 2 more at the mid-chest, between and just below the breasts. There are defects to the shirts consistent with the underlying wounds. There are no defense injuries to the hands, wrists, or forearms. The right hand is closed in a loose fist. Post-mortem findings at arrival at 2027 and 2155 are the same. The body is mostly flaccid. The hands appear to be slightly stiff. The body is cool to the touch at the extremities and warm to the touch at the torso, front and back. Lividity is inconspicuous. Findings are consistent with current position of the body. Blood is present on the head, in the hair, and neck. The right hand has blood on it. On the front side of her shirts, along her pants on the front side, and on top of both of her boots is blood. The right boot has blood on the sole. The blood around her is generally confined to the area of the body, on the floor underneath, and on the face of the cabinets behind her. One small blood spatter is on the cabinet to the left of the body. 2 separate drops of blood spatter are on the granite countertop above her. 2 kitchen knives are in the sink adjacent to the body. They are free of any blood or tissue. The sink underneath is dry and also bears no evidence of blood or tissue. A knife block is on the counter between the sink and the range. It is turned over to the side. The 3 utensils are a spatula, fork, and paring knife, all that bear no evidence of blood or tissue. The knife in her body is consistent with the knife set found in the sink and in the block. Now, that evening of her death, after authorities arrived, the investigative report says the scene and body were examined, interviews were conducted, and photographs were taken. The knife was kept in place during transport. The RX meds and small booklet were taken as evidence. At 11:25 p.m. that same evening, Sam Goldberg was transported to the Northwest Detectives Division of the Philadelphia Police Department for questioning. I am going to read a summary of the first police interview with Sam Goldberg. During this interview, the fiancé said that Ellen was already home when he arrived home around 1:30 p.m. that day. While at home, Ellen was upset about her job and indicated that she wanted to quit. The fiancé noted that Ellen had been stressed over work for a couple of weeks leading up to that day. After offering some encouragement to his fiancé, he said he left the apartment around 4:45 p.m. to use the apartment building's gym. When he left, Ellen was reportedly in the apartment grading papers. The fiancé then stated he returned to the apartment around 5:20 p.m. and found that the latch for their apartment door was engaged. He reportedly called and texted Ellen without a response. The fiancé then said he went back down to the apartment building lobby to talk to the building's concierge and see if a maintenance worker was available to help at the door. He said he then proceeded back to his apartment and tried calling Ellen again, with no response. The fiancé stated he forced entry into the apartment at 6:29 p.m. Of note, during this police interview, he did not claim to be accompanied by apartment building staff when he forced entry, nor was he specifically asked by police if his entry into the apartment was witnessed or not. When he saw Ellen on the kitchen floor, the fiancé said he called 911. The 911 operator reportedly asked the fiancé if he would be willing to provide CPR to Ellen if the operator guided him through it. The fiancé said he agreed, but when he got close to Ellen to start rendering aid, he saw a knife in her body. The fiancé reportedly informed the 911 operator of the knife, and the operator advised the fiancé to wait for emergency responders to render aid. Now, according to the Hulu documentary Death in Apartment 603, Ellen's parents were contacted by Sam's parents at some point that night, who gave them the news that their daughter was dead. And I don't know exactly what was told to Ellen's parents or relayed, but it is clear that a conclusion had been made that evening that Ellen had committed suicide. While now, today, Ellen's parents do not believe that to be the case, that is what was conveyed to them. A friend of Ellen's received a call from Ellen's mom the next day, and she told the friend that Ellen had taken her own life. The initial belief of her death being a suicide seemed to come from Sam Goldberg being cooperative, there being no signs of an intruder, the apartment reportedly being locked from the inside, and Ellen having no defensive wounds. Now, let's switch over to the morning of January 27th. A lot happens on the 27th, so we're going to start with the interviews of Ellen's parents. Ellen's parents were interviewed by the medical examiner's office investigator on January 27th at 7:41 a.m. During that interview, Ellen's mother, Sandra, said she last spoke with Ellen the day before around 7 a.m. During that conversation, Sandra said Ellen didn't indicate that anything was wrong. But they did tell investigators, though, that Ellen had been dealing with anxiety issues for several weeks leading up to her death. Ellen's parents said she seemed anxious, insecure, not sure of herself, and that she wasn't liking how she felt. They knew she had been seeing a psychiatrist, which Sandra had urged Ellen to do, and they knew the source of her stress seemed to come from her work as a teacher. On the day of Ellen's death, there was a deadline for Ellen to turn in grades. Ellen's parents said they had no concerns about Ellen's fiancé. They said they were happy to have him as an in-law and described him as being a, quote, fine young man. They also said they didn't know of any prior verbal or physical abuse in the relationship. They also said Ellen had no history of suicide attempts or ideation that they knew of. That same day, the 27th, at 11:30 a.m., Ellen's psychiatrist was interviewed. The psychiatrist said that she only recently started seeing Ellen and that they had only had 3 appointments prior to her death. Those appointments were on January 12th, the 17th, and 19th. Ellen had an appointment scheduled for the 27th. The psychiatrist said that Ellen was being seen for severe anxiety that she had been experiencing over the last 2 months. Ellen told her psychiatrist that her stress was related to work, that she was feeling overwhelmed and pressured. The psychiatrist said that Ellen mentioned during a session that recent changes in school regulations and issues with difficult students were issues for her, and that she was contemplating leaving her job. The psychiatrist told investigators that one of Ellen's parents had contacted the psychiatrist's office to convey their concerns they had for Ellen. Now, regarding Ellen and Sam's relationship, the psychiatrist said that Ellen had nothing but good things to say about her fiancé and denied any verbal or physical abuse in their relationship. Ellen had initially been prescribed medication, though she did express some sort of wariness to the psychiatrist in taking any. But she tried Zoloft first and then switched to a low dose of Xanax. But after no success, the psychiatrist prescribed her Ambien and Klonopin to help her sleep. Also on the 27th, early in the morning, Melissa Ware, the apartment property manager where Sam and Ellen lived, received a call from a relative of Sam's asking if they could come to the apartment to grab some personal items for Ellen's funeral. Melissa first contacted the Philadelphia Police Department and asked if she was allowed to let the family come to the apartment to grab anything. According to her written declaration, the police told her there were no restrictions regarding entering the apartment. She then asked about the state of the apartment, and she was told that cleanup isn't the responsibility of the police department, and they referred her to a private cleaning business called Crime Scene Cleanup. Now, Melissa made arrangements with Crime Scene Cleanup for them to come and clean the apartment, and she told Sam's family member that they could come and grab those items. Melissa said before the cleaning crew arrived, she arranged for and was present for a videotaping of the inside of the apartment. And she said she did this to preserve a record of the condition and contents of the apartment before anyone else could come inside. And she said this was primarily done to protect the apartment company in the event there was any damage. After the videotaping, Crime Scene Cleanup arrived, and after that, a member of the Goldberg family, someone Melissa believes was Sam's uncle, came and she was present while they retrieved various items from the apartment. According to Crime Timeline's write-up of this case, the relative grabbed a suit, Ellen's purse, cell phone, and a laptop. Ellen's autopsy was also conducted on January 27th. It was at 9 a.m. and conducted by Dr. Osborne. And while at the scene, investigators could see she had multiple wounds to her chest, the autopsy revealed her injuries were far more extensive. Now, I am not going to read through everything in the autopsy, but I will have it linked so you can read it for yourself. Here are the highlights. Ellen had a total of 20 stab wounds, and the injuries were to her chest, neck, and the back of her head. 8 of the stab wounds were on the chest and posterior neck and penetrated only 0.2 or 0.3 centimeters, so less than 1/8 of an inch deep, with only superficial soft tissue being injured. 5 of the stab wounds were on the chest and posterior neck, and those penetrated between 1/2 and 7/8 of an inch deep, with no vital structures being injured. 1 of the stab wounds on the posterior neck penetrated about 1 3/16 inches deep. 1 of the stab wounds was also described as an incised wound on the right occipital scalp. There are photos of this online. It is over 2 inches long, and the depth is not documented. The 5 remaining stab wounds are as follows, and I will refer to them as the labels they have on the autopsy report. Stab wound E was to her chest, with the depth of penetration being 10 centimeters. This perforated her aortic arch and left lung. This is the wound the knife was found sticking out of. Stab wound H says, quote, perforation of the chest wall, penetration of the liver, and was 4 centimeters deep. This wound was associated with an unspecified volume of intra-abdominal hemorrhage. Stab wound I, perforation of the abdominal wall, penetration of the mesentery. The depth of penetration was 6 centimeters. Stab wound N, perforations of dura at skull base and intracranial blood vessels overlying the cerebellum. The depth of penetration was 8 centimeters. It says, quote, associated subarachnoid hemorrhage of the cerebellum. Stab wound T, perforations of the posterior neck muscles and dura of the spine between the second and third cervical vertebrae. The depth of penetration was 7 centimeters, and it says associated focal epidural hemorrhage of the spinal canal. Now, the most controversial of the wounds are definitely the ones to the back of her, specifically wound N and wound T, which were to the base of the back of her head and towards her spinal cord. We will talk about that controversy later on, but there is a note in the initial autopsy report that says, Dr. Lucy Rourke examined the spinal cord and concluded that there is no defect of the spinal cord. The medical examiner also noted that multiple contusions on her upper and lower extremities were in various stages of resolution, meaning she had bruises all over her body, and they were in various stages of healing. The autopsy report stated, the cause of death was multiple stab wounds, and the manner of death was a homicide. On January 28th, Ellen's funeral was held and took place in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. According to the Hulu documentary, during the funeral, the news that Ellen's death had been ruled a homicide by the medical examiner began spreading all over the media. A woman who attended the funeral, according to the documentary, said she received a call from someone who let her know that this news was all over the news, and this was the first she had heard about it. The woman let Ellen's parents know, as they were also unaware. So Ellen's parents learn that their daughter's death has just been ruled a homicide. Ellen's father then goes up to give his planned eulogy for his daughter, and he announces the news to everyone attending the funeral. Following the medical examiner determination that her death was a homicide, police obtained a search warrant and collected multiple items from Sam's uncle. Those items included 2 white Apple MacBook laptops, a black Apple MacBook laptop, and a purple iPhone. After the medical examiner determination and the search warrant where they get those items that Sam's relative had taken out of the apartment, a few things start to happen. 1, just 2 days after Osborne's ruling of homicide, a police spokesperson began to publicly dispute his findings and said that police were leaning towards suicide and looking into some, quote, mental issues Ellen may have had. On March 3rd, 2011, Osborne and former Chief Medical Examiner Sam Galino were asked to attend a meeting with members of the District Attorney's Office and the Philadelphia Police Department. Both considered this meeting to be unusual, and they couldn't recall any other meeting like it in their time working there. Galino later testified, quote, it's clear that they were presenting information because they felt that the manner of death was different from what had been ruled. After this meeting, on March 10th, 2011, the medical examiner's office changes their ruling and determines Ellen's death was a suicide. Ellen's parents were completely devastated. Her father said it was just as devastating as the night she died. He said they both blacked out. And he said that they found out this news once again from the media. Now, in the 14 years since Ellen's death, her parents have been fighting for answers and justice. They do not believe she committed suicide. So let's go through some of the details of the investigation and the rulings, the things that are quite controversial. And let's start with the investigation itself. this was not properly investigated from the very beginning. And this isn't me inserting my own opinion, this is just a fact. It's a basic principle in death investigations that deaths are treated as homicides until it can be proven otherwise. But on that very first day, the very evening of Ellen's death, police were under the impression that Ellen had committed suicide. And this had to have been from Sam's assertion that the door was locked, him saying she was stressed with work, and I'm assuming from him immediately saying she stabbed herself or fell on the knife, which you heard in the 911 call. They took his word for it and allowed the scene to be cleaned the very next day by professional crime scene cleaners. And they allowed people to take items from the apartment. This shows they didn't consider the apartment to be a crime scene at all. Now, let's talk about the meeting that took place between the district attorney's office, the police department, Dr. Osborne, who performed her autopsy, and the chief medical examiner at the time. Now, a medical examiner takes into account multiple things when determining the manner of death, and one of those things they take into consideration are elements of the scene. So at this meeting, Osborne said police confirmed a doorman was with Sam Goldberg when the door was broken down. Osborne was quoted as saying, quote, "It was important to find out if it was broken, if anyone was there to see it be broken, or was it just the story we're getting from the decedent's boyfriend that it was broken by him?" He says, quote, "It doesn't seem like anyone else could have been in the room to inflict those injuries other than Miss Greenberg herself, and that is how I came to the conclusion of suicide." The problem with this, though, is that the doorman was not with Sam when he knocked the door down. The medical examiner is saying that just relying on Sam's word alone, that the door was locked from the inside and he broke it down, isn't enough. So when police tell him that the doorman was there and witnessed it, that was enough for him to come to the conclusion that no one else could have been inside the apartment, since the door was locked from the inside. But Phil, the doorman, wasn't there. He signed a written declaration stating he did not accompany Sam, that he didn't witness anything Sam did on the 6th floor, and video surveillance confirms this. It's unclear why police told the medical examiner that Phil was with Sam when he broke the door down. I haven't found anything in summaries of Sam's interviews to show that even Sam claimed that Phil was with him. Now, there was a neighbor interviewed on the 28th, so 2 days later, and this neighbor said that he witnessed Sam trying to get into the apartment, that Sam told him it was locked from the inside, and reportedly showed the neighbor it was locked by forcibly pushing the door to show it wouldn't open. The neighbor said they couldn't see the latch engaged at this point, but noted the latch, quote, reverberating and making noise. According to the neighbor, he said, quote, "It was clear it was latched." I don't know if police also mentioned to Osborne that the neighbor claimed to have known the door was locked, but Osborne was asked in a deposition if he would have changed his homicide ruling to suicide if there was still a dispute about whether someone was with Sam when he broke the door down, whether the door was broken at all, and whether the lock was engaged when Ellen was stabbed. He said no, he wouldn't have, and that he would have been closer to ruling the death as undetermined. So whether or not the door was locked from the inside is a really big piece of this controversy, and clearly was one of the main points going into Osborne's ruling. And staying on the subject of the locks, there's been a big question about whether the swing bar lock could have been engaged from the outside, and I haven't seen anything to suggest that this was ever investigated. Back to Osborne's suicide ruling, he testified that he also changed the manner of death to suicide because of the spinal cord exam, the lack of defensive wounds, the lack of incapacitating drugs in her system, no signs of an intruder, the broken door, Sam's statements, and police findings from the scene. But regarding the spinal cord, in the original autopsy report where he ruled it a homicide, he did say that a Dr. Rourke examined the spinal cord and concluded that there was no defect. Now, I found an article claiming that Osborne had Rourke examine the spinal cord after the meeting with the DA and police, but her findings were published in the initial report, so I don't think that that's the case. But either way, according to Osborne, instead of having Rourke come to the medical examiner's office, He just walked a section of her spinal cord over to her office in the snow for a, quote, curbside exam. He said she didn't do a microscopic exam, but was apparently able to tell him that the dura, which is the sheath that covers the spinal cord, was cut, but not the cord itself. So there was no indication that she had lost motor function. So you have this, quote, curbside exam, but there was no report ever made by Rourke with her findings, and there was never a bill for her work. In fact, she told the Inquirer in a 2018 article that she had no recollection of conducting this exam at all, and that without there being a report or a bill for her services, quote, I would conclude that I did not see the specimen in question, although there is a remote possibility that it was shown to me. Now, other tests have been done in the years since on a portion of Ellen's spinal cord, which had been kept in storage at the medical examiner's office, and an examination in 2019 said there were apparently 3 injuries to Ellen's spinal cord. One, the examiner said, was an injury to the spinal cord tissue itself, which the examiner said was done during the autopsy, but it's unclear how they came to that determination. The other 2 injuries included a cut to the bone and ligaments in the back of her spinal column and a corresponding cut to the dura that were from a, quote, bona fide sharp force injury and were not done during the autopsy. The examiner also said that there was something notable about the injuries. There was no hemorrhaging around them, suggesting that Ellen was either dead when the wounds were inflicted, or that there wasn't enough time between when the wound was inflicted and Ellen's death for hemorrhaging to occur. The examiner did say, though, that despite those injuries, they wouldn't have incapacitated her. So there's the changing of the ruling from homicide to suicide, the police saying Phil was present when he wasn't, the neighbor saying it was clear the lock was latched, but no investigation into if the lock could be locked from the outside, and then there's the issues with the spinal cord exam, all of that. Many have also pointed out that blood on Ellen's face and the way the blood traveled along her face is inconsistent with how her body was found, suggesting she'd been moved. There was apparently a trail of blood going along Ellen's face from her nose toward her ear. Taking gravity into consideration, as you do, that would mean her head would have had to have been lying on the side, but she was found with her head up, so the direction of the blood is parallel to the ground. Sam doesn't mention moving her. I mean, I could see maybe where if he initially ran in and grabbed her and pulled her up to the slouched position she was in, I could see that happening, but there's no record of that. Now, Ellen also had bruising in various stages of healing. One of those bruises was on the top of her forehead right by her hairline. Now, some say that this could be bruising you get in regular day-to-day life, but some reports have described the bruising as indicative of a repeated beating. Now, Ellen never mentioned abuse in her relationship, and no one had anything bad to say about Sam immediately following her death, but we know that many don't outright say abuse is happening if it is. Some point to the text messages he sent her and how they increasingly get more angry and are seemingly threatening. He said, quote, "You have no idea," and, quote, "You better have an excuse." Some reports have said that with the bruising, there's evidence Ellen may have been strangled, noting fingernail marks on the front of the neck and multiple bruises under the neck, which are, quote, "evidence of strangulation" and are compatible with manual strangulation. Now, regarding suicide, many have said that they were unaware of any suicidal ideation or suicide attempts, but like domestic violence and abuse, many don't share that or show classic signs. Now, she was seeing a psychiatrist for severe anxiety, and almost everyone who knew her well knew she was extremely stressed with her job and wanted to quit. She was overwhelmed, and notes from her appointments with her psychiatrist said Ellen described herself as a hard worker and a perfectionist who felt she was in an impossible situation, with constant work and persistent feelings of criticism. It says, quote, "Ellen indicated to her psychiatrist that she wanted to quit her job. Ellen indicated she was frustrated because she thought she should be happy with her life, but wasn't." If you remember too, her parents were concerned enough about Ellen and said she wasn't herself in recent weeks and months, and it was enough that they called the psychiatrist to talk about those concerns. So while no one said she ever specifically talked about suicide outright, it is clear she was very much struggling and unhappy. Ellen also displayed what many classify to be hesitation wounds, which are extremely shallow knife marks. But as everything is debated in this case, some say that the orientation of all the wounds are not indicative of something she could have done herself and don't look like classic hesitation wounds. And, suicide by stabbing is incredibly rare. According to a study I will link in the show notes, it constitutes only 1.6 to 3% of suicide attempts. Diving even deeper into the few attempts that are seen, her wounds would be even more rare. Things like stabbing through clothing isn't something you see in self-stabbings, and stabbing yourself on the back of the head would be incredibly rare, if not unheard of. Additionally, a forensic analysis of their computers was done, and a report was issued on March 22, 2011. The results show that on one of the two computers Ellen had, one appeared to be her work computer, there were 7 files found by searching for the word depressed, 6 found by searching for the keyword suicide, and 1 found by searching suicide methods. Interestingly, on Sam's computer, there were 6 files found with the keyword search suicide. Now, I haven't done as much digging into the computer searches and what is specifically meant by what they found, but there is evidence to show that Ellen had searched for suicide methods. She had also been searching for side effects of her medication. At least those searches were done on her computer. So these are some aspects that point to a potential suicide. But many others, however, note that Ellen had filled up her car with gas on the way home from work. She had also called a restaurant, and in the kitchen at the time of her death, there was fruit being cut, and many say she appeared to be making a fruit salad. To them, this indicates she had intentions of continuing her life. There are records of her last text messages, which were to a friend or coworker, and the last message was sent by Ellen at 3:41 p.m. Now, in those messages, there's nothing that indicates she was suicidal, but she was expressing frustrations with work, and you can read those messages in the documents that I will link in the show notes. Now, to wrap this up, I am going to read from the report published on October 10th, where the chief medical examiner conducts a review of this case and gives her opinion that her death is a suicide. I am going to read the conclusion of the 10 consultative reports where other experts have reviewed the case and have given their opinion. I then will read the final analysis of Ellen's death provided by the chief medical examiner, which summarizes how she came to her opinion. Here are the consultative reports. This is a consultative report conducted on January 11th, 2012. Materials reportedly reviewed included the autopsy report with photographs, the medical examiner office investigative report and interviews, and psychiatric records for Ellen Greenberg. Findings and opinions from the report. Suicides by stabbing rarely have multiple stab wounds. Stab wounds to the posterior neck and head are unlikely to be from suicide. Suicides may have cuts or tentative stabbings to see if it hurts or to work up courage. Suicides usually only have one significant wound, mostly to the chest. Quote, a suicide victim will frequently leave a note. There was none here. There was no prior indication of suicidal ideation to family, friends, coworkers, and the psychiatrist. And suicide victims rarely stab themselves through their clothing. The final conclusion from this report. Based upon a reasonable degree of medical certainty, the manner of death of Ellen Greenberg is strongly suspicious of homicide. The next is a letter from a doctor dated December 18th, 2016. The materials reviewed were not specified, but it says, the final conclusion, it is my opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the manner of death is a homicide. The next consultative report is from January 10th, 2017. Materials reviewed were retained tissue from the autopsy, scene photographs, autopsy report, and autopsy photographs. It says the findings and conclusion from that report. The scene findings were indicative of a homicide. Another consultative report by a detective on April 14th, 2017 says, final conclusion from the report. Ellen was not in the position in which she was found when the injuries occurred. So this one doesn't say homicide or suicide, but says that she was not in the position she was in when the injuries happened. The next consultative report is dated January 29th, 2018. Final conclusion from the report. The number and type of wounds and bloodstain patterns observed are consistent with a homicide scene. There was then a biomechanical analysis done on May 12, 2021. Final conclusion from the report. Miss Greenberg's manner of death is not biomechanically consistent with suicide. Another consultative report, which is dated June 1st, 2021. Final conclusion from the report. The necessary degree of medical certainty to support the selection of suicide as the manner of Ellen's death is patently lacking. Another consultative report dated July 1st, 2024. The final conclusion from that report says the manner of death is suicide. Here it says the reasoning for that included the topics relating to suicide found on Ellen's laptop, autopsy findings, there being no injury to the spinal cord that would have prevented Ellen from inflicting the injuries herself. It says since all injuries had associated soft tissue hemorrhaging, they were inflicted when she was alive. It says because she had no defensive wounds to her body, because she could have reached all the areas where the stab wounds were found, and that while stab wounds to the posterior head and neck are atypical, they're not physically inconsistent with being self-inflicted. The next consultative report was dated July 22nd, 2024. It says the final conclusion from that report, Ellen did not commit suicide. Another consultative report on October 10th, 2024. The final conclusion on that one is the manner of death of Miss Greenberg is suicide. And in that one, it also references that the wounds could be self-inflicted, that she wasn't incapacitated. It says that she had the computer searches, methods of committing suicide, quick death, and depression. It notes the autopsy photographs, and that's how they came to the conclusion, the manner of death is suicide. So those 10 consultative reports, 2 of them say the manner of death was suicide. 1 doesn't note what they believe the manner of death to be, just says that she was moved. And then the other one says that the injuries are not biomechanically consistent with a suicide. So now let's talk about what this medical examiner wrote in the most recent opinion that was published on October 10th. She says, in the final analysis of Ellen's death, to summarize the entirety of this report, Ellen Greenberg was a young woman suffering from anxiety at the time of her death. The anxiety appeared mostly to be due to her work as a teacher. She was specifically worried that the grades she needed to submit on the day of her death would indicate that she had previously given inflated grades to her students. She expressed this anxiety about her grades to friends, coworkers, and her fiancé in the hours leading up to her death. She was under the care of a psychiatrist for this anxiety. While her recent change in medications had helped with the insomnia associated with her anxiety, she did not survive long enough to address the anxiety itself. Thus, she had an increase in energy to act on her anxious thoughts. Ellen was found dead in her apartment with 23 stab and incised wounds. These wounds were limited to her posterior head neck, right neck, the central front torso. While the distribution of injuries is admittedly unusual, the fact remains that Ellen would be capable of inflicting these injuries herself. Many of these stab and incised wounds would best be categorized as hesitation wounds. No defensive injuries were identified on her body. There was no evidence to indicate Ellen was incapacitated or incapable of defending herself. The fiancé's DNA was not detected on the knife used to inflict the injuries. His self-reported timeline of events is corroborated by phone logs, text messages, surveillance footage, keycard swipes, and police interviews. No evidence was provided to indicate Ellen was in an abusive relationship with her fiancé. There was no evidence of a third party being in the apartment on the day of Ellen's death, nor was anyone else's DNA detected on the knife used to inflict the injuries on Ellen's body. No findings of a struggle were found at the scene, and no valuables were reported missing from the apartment. With all of this information considered, it is the opinion of the undersigned that the manner of death in Ellen Greenberg's death is best classified as suicide. So that is what the chief medical examiner has come to. That opinion was published on October 10th, 2025. This is a horrific case. And there's a couple of things that stood out to me when I was doing my own research, and this is where I'm going to talk about my own opinion. So if you want, take a pause, consider all of this, come to your own conclusion, and then, let me know what you think on social media, send me an email, whatever. But this is my opinion. The things that stuck out to me the most when researching this case were one of the biggest things that needs to be figured out is the latch on the door and the lock. If it is impossible for that lock to be latched or locked from the outside, then to me that does show more that it was a suicide because there was no indication of anyone else being in there. Many say, well, Sam could have killed Ellen, walked out of the apartment, and locked the latch from the outside to make it seem like it was a suicide. The problem is there was no investigation done to see if this was possible. And I've heard people say that you can go on YouTube and find ways to lock those swing bar latches from the outside. So that's a problem. And there was no one there to actually see him break down the door. The neighbor claims to have seen that the latch was engaged, but I don't know. I have a hard time kind of understanding that. He was looking at it from his door. He said it was clearly locked, but again, we don't know. Was it possible for Sam to have locked it himself from the outside? We just don't know. That's a big thing that needs to be answered, and I don't think we'll ever know the answer because they didn't investigate it. The other thing that sticks out to me is the type of injuries that she had. Yes, there were no defensive wounds, but suicide by stabbing is already incredibly rare. And for you to stab yourself in the back of the head and the knife went into the back of her head to her brain and almost pierced her spinal cord. That is crazy to me. It just seems incredibly unlikely that someone would do it. And to me, that points it to murder. But there are a lot of the hesitation wounds, so that could be indicative of a suicide. Now, many say that there was no evidence that Ellen was suicidal. I don't think that to be the case. I think there is a lot to show that she was very much struggling with her mental health at the time of her death. I think it's clear that she was very stressed out with her job, saying she was unhappy with her life to her psychiatrist. And the issues were bad enough that her mother called the psychiatrist to talk about that. I don't know if this is something her mother would normally do, but to me, it seems like it was bad enough that not only did the mother recommend she go see a psychiatrist, but she called the psychiatrist herself to talk about Ellen's struggles. So I think there is enough there to show that she was significantly struggling. Just because she never outright told her psychiatrist or friends and family that she was feeling suicidal, that doesn't mean that she wasn't. One thing I don't know, it said that there was trace amounts of some of the medication she had been described, but I have seen it described as being a very small amount in her system. Some people do have wild reactions to the type of medication, so that's tough. Another thing that sticks out to me is the bruising all over her body. A lot of reports I've seen have tried to downplay this as bruising you could get in your normal day-to-day life. I've seen pictures of the bruises. That does not seem to be the case to me. And there's bruising to her neck. I think that paired with the text messages that Sam had sent her show that she very well could have been abused. I mean, it's just speculation, but I think it's interesting how angry he gets when he's sending her messages. I mean, he's sending her threatening text messages saying, you'd better have an excuse. You have no idea, stuff like that. I think that's very odd. And I think paired with the bruising that we see on her, it's very suspect. So these are my final thoughts that I typed up and wrapped up nicely. While there is evidence that Ellen was in significant distress leading up to her death, the sheer number and types of injuries she had are extraordinarily rare for a suicide. What I think complicates this even further is the deeply flawed investigation into her death. From the outset, it lacked the proper attention and thoroughness it deserved, It was almost immediately considered to be a suicide, which is not standard. Key elements were overlooked, including a deeper look into their relationship, like the bruising she had and the angry and semi-threatening text messages from Sam. The door lock was not investigated. The incredibly unprofessional, quote, curbside exam of her spinal cord for the original autopsy report, and the contradicting statements from police that influenced the first change from homicide to suicide. So even if Ellen did take her own life, the investigation was handled so poorly and was so profoundly mismanaged that it's impossible to have confidence in that conclusion. So with all of that, in my opinion, if you are looking at it from the medical examiner perspective and what I think the medical examiner should have done, I personally don't think there is any way you can come to a responsible conclusion other than undetermined. I think if you are factoring in the investigation, as medical examiners do when making these determinations, you can't just look at the investigation. You have to factor in the errors with the investigation, the parts that were not looked into thoroughly, the immediate ruling of a suicide, the cleaning of the scene the next day. You have to factor all of that in. The unprofessional curbside exam, all of this. With that being factored in, how do you come to a conclusion that it was a suicide? You have to come, I think, to at least a conclusion of undetermined. Now, if you're looking at the investigation and saying this is way too flawed, we cannot factor this into our decision just because of the many errors and contradictions from police and all of that. Take the investigation out of it. Then you are just looking at her wounds. And from that perspective, that's kind of where I am drawing my opinion. The investigation was so flawed, set that aside. While suicides by stabbing do happen, they are incredibly rare. Then, when looking at the specific injuries to Ellen, to the back of her head, to her neck, those are even more rare, if not completely unheard of. And I am someone where in my former job, you look at the likelihood of something happening, you're looking at statistics, your confidence levels, all of that. It is incredibly unlikely, it's very unlikely that she did these injuries to herself. Is it possible? Sure, but very unlikely. The most likely scenario is that she was murdered. And so that is where I come to. And I'll be honest, before I did this deep dive, I was someone where I really didn't have an opinion. I thought, looking at these cases, they're very controversial. Everyone, people have heated arguments and debates on this case. And I try to stay out of it. When looking at those debates and those arguments, I thought that the people who believed firmly that she was murdered downplayed her mental health concerns. But I also thought that the people who believe she committed suicide, I thought overplayed those concerns and downplayed the potential abuse that she was suffering in her relationship, which I think is evidenced by the bruising on her body and the threatening messages she was receiving from her fiance. So it took me a while. It took me a lot of research. And so in my opinion, the people that are reviewing her case that have done ideally this in-depth research into the investigation, her wounds, the autopsy, my assumption is they're also doing research into suicides by stabbing, the likelihood and all of that. I really just don't see how the medical examiner could come to anything other than undetermined. And my view is that the most likely scenario is she was murdered, that someone did this to her. Yeah, so, this is really all I have for this case. I try to not cover these very controversial cases. People just, argue about it, and there's not much that I myself can contribute, I think, to the conversation. I'm no expert. I'm just someone here with a microphone. But what I will offer is if you are interested in supporting Ellen Greenberg's family's legal fund or their efforts to have petitions be signed to get her case reopened, I will have that be the first link in the show notes of this episode. So once again, please let me know what you think about this case. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Cardinal Crimes. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing, giving us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast, and sharing this episode with others. You can find us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram with the handle @CardinalCrimes, and you can send us any case suggestions, questions, or topics you would like covered there or to our email, cardinalcrimes@gmail.com. Until next time, friends, take care of each other and take care of yourself. If you've ever thought about starting your own podcast, there's no better place to begin than with Buzzsprout. It's the platform I use, and it makes publishing, promoting, and tracking your episodes so easy, even if you're not tech savvy. Plus, they help you get listed in all the major directories like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. And here's the best part. When you sign up for a paid Buzzsprout plan using my affiliate link, you'll get $20 off, and you'll be supporting the show at the same time. Just head to the description of this episode to find the affiliate link. Now, let's get back to the episode.